Okay, so the extent to which trade can happen depends on two factors. The first, which we just discussed, will be the difference between the marginal personal worths. So the reason why you're able to purchase coffee from Starbucks, for example, is because the marginal personal worth of the coffee is higher to you than it is to Starbucks. In other words, your demand curve for coffee will be further out to the right than Starbucks's. The second one, which we're going to spend some time talking about here, will be the cost of discovering these differences and arranging the transactions. Now, the cost of discovering the differences and arranging the transactions, these are almost always referred to as transactions costs. It is very rare, especially in advanced societies such as the United States, for ultimate buyers to trade directly with ultimate producers. For example, we as the ultimate consumer of groceries almost never interact with the farmers who produce the groceries for us. Some exceptions obviously apply, such as farmers markets, but they're exceptions and certainly not the rule. We can also think of buying cars, gasoline, cell phones, textbooks, etc., but we can also think about selling these things too. If you've ever tried to sell a used car, for example, one of the easiest ways to do it is to take it to a dealership and trade it in. Alternatively, you can incur the cost of trying to find a reputable buyer who would be willing to pay for the car themselves. But that cost costs you time, and time is valuable, and so it would be a transactions cost. To reduce these transactions costs, most of us interact with what we could call an intermediary, or sometimes negatively referred to as a middleman. We've talked about these in the context of the POW camp a few videos ago, but it's worth mentioning again. The purpose of the intermediary is to reduce the overall cost of a transaction. They do this by reducing the transactions cost of matching a willing buyer with a reputable seller. To do so, the intermediaries must be paid, and so the money cost of the transaction will increase. But if we compare this increase in the money price to the cost of the time and effort it would take the buyers and sellers to find one another on their own, the savings are readily apparent. For example, it is much less costly in terms of the total cost for us to go to the grocery store to buy our groceries than it would be for us to drive around to all the various farms and factories that produce the food that we wish to consume. The time that we would spend driving around is worth something to us. And so even though we would save some money by buying direct from the farms, we would end up spending far more time than the savings were actually worth. Therefore, a successful intermediary does not actually cost you extra, and eliminating the middleman or the intermediary would not save you anything. In fact, the intermediary confers a savings on you. The full cost of the transaction, which would be the sum of the money cost and the transaction costs, is the relevant cost for decision making for both buyers and sellers. The money price is only one component of this. Intermediaries reduce this full cost. So let's give an example of this. In my life, I get haircuts probably once every month, maybe every 2 months. My all-time favorite barbershop is a little place in Arlington, Virginia. And so this little place in Arlington, Virginia charges $12 for a haircut. The barbershop down the street from me, however, charges $20 for a haircut. Despite the higher price, in terms of money, I'm willing to go to the barber shop down the street. Why is this? Well, that's because the transactions cost of getting me from Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I currently am, to Arlington, Virginia, is extraordinarily high. So high, in fact, that there's no way that I would be willing to incur the cost. And so because of this, I am willing to spend more money on my haircut by going to the barber shop down the street than I would if I were to go to the barber shop in Arlington, Virginia. The reason for this, again, is the transactions cost. The cost of getting me to Arlington, Virginia, or of bringing those barbers out to Grand Rapids, Michigan, would be either the day in the car or a plane ticket. Now, I'm not quite willing to fly a barber out here just to cut my hair, and I'm not quite willing to buy a plane ticket just to go get my hair cut. However, if I have a trip out to Virginia lined up and I know I'm going to need a haircut pretty soon, I'll typically wait and get my haircut out there. But in that case, the cost of the plane ticket is not relevant to my decision to get my haircut in Virginia. The plane ticket is already purchased and was purchased for a different purpose, and so it is in fact a sunk cost and is irrelevant to my decision about where to get my haircut. Once I've incurred that cost, the only relevant comparison becomes the quality of the haircut and its price in Arlington, Virginia versus the quality of the haircut and its price in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Given those two choices, I choose the barbershop in Arlington, Virginia.